Hey, good morning, good morning. So, here we are again. It's day 3 of this install. My camera batteries all died on me at the same time, so I was unable to get the video of the install of the front struts. So I'm going to kind of just go through a vague overview of everything. I ran into quite a few problems, so I'm kind of glad I wasn't recording because I was cussing and swearing a bunch. So I'll show you what I did, how I did it, and some of the problems I ran into. So hopefully you can try to avoid some of those problems when you do your install. So let's go over to the car. So first things first, when you put these front struts in, you have to drill 3 holes. 1, 2, 3 on each side to mount the struts in. Now Airlift gives you a template in the back of their instruction manual, which is pretty cool. I cut it out. I did exactly what it said to do. I put it right around the center column. I center punched and then drilled 3 11/32 holes, just like the instructions said. So I first did it on the driver's side, and when I went to test fit the strut, the bolts would not fit through the holes. I mean, they probably would have if I forced them, but they weren't going to go through. So I ended up drilling the holes up to a 1/2 inch, which gave me plenty of leeway to slide the studs right through. Now, when I first put in the first strut, the driver's side over here, here's the first issue I ran into. The holes, even though I put the template on here and I had it right around the middle nice and tight, this hole back here was too far towards the back of the car. So when I put it in, all the holes lined up, everything went through, but there's a little seam on the inside of here, on the underside, that the plate would not sit flat because the seam was there. So what I ended up having to do is, you can kind of tell, I can kind of zoom in on these spots, I kind of had to widen the holes a little bit so I could shift the strut over just enough so it would sit flush in there. So that was problem number 1. Now we come over to the other side. The other side, the holes lined up pretty great in the back. These two were perfect. This one, I had to stretch out a little bit this way towards the outside of the car because it wouldn't fit. This hole right here was from, I had a new speed strut bar sitting in here, so that's what that hole is from. I didn't drill that one. So I was able to widen this hole just a skosh, you can kind of see the marks there, and pull it towards me and get everything to go in. Now here's where I ran into my second problem. And this goes to just lack of paying attention and being an idiot. But I read the manual, the instructions, and I saw in the instructions I saw a torque spec of 52 foot-pounds, and I thought they were referring to these. So my dumb ass decided to set my torque wrench to 52 foot-pounds and started torquing away on this back one right here, which was actually this one. This one was over there. And I started torquing, and it wouldn't go. Next thing you know, snap. I snapped the stud. You heard it right. I snapped one of the studs. Oh, was there a lot of cussing and swearing involved in that. And then I realized the 52 foot-pounds is for the bolt down below that holds the strut into the tower, or into the knuckle. So there was problem number 2. The big problem. So what I ended up doing to resolve that is I ended up having to take the strut back out, take apart the strut, remove the bearing, the mounting plate, and I tried to hammer it out because they looked like they were pressed in, but what I ended up doing was just drilling the old stud out, and then I bought a bolt, 3/8 bolt, and nut and washer, and just redid it that way. So this one right here is actually a bolt through. Still torque it down 27 foot-pounds. Everything seems to be good and solid. I'm not going to buy another stud. I'm just going to leave it the way it is. So those were the 2 issues I ran into. Big issues. So I'm going to go back around to the other side of the car here. Just a quick recap of installing strut. The strut goes in exactly the opposite of the way you took it out. Line up your top nuts, put it in, put your nuts in, hold it, torque them down so they're a little tight. You don't want to torque them down all the way. Get your jack underneath and start lifting up your steering knuckle. Coat the inside of this with anti-seize and start pushing up and start letting the pressure of the strut push itself down into the knuckle. Now if it won't go in all the way, this little handy dandy tool helps. It's a strut spreader tool, 3/8 drive. You put it in the back of the knuckle, you turn it, which actually spreads it open wider, and then the strut will slide down a lot easier. And if you don't have one of these, you can order them online, or you can try to put a pry. I've seen people put pry bars back there and use that too. So the big key is just making sure it seats all the way to the bottom. The anti-seize will help as a lubricant to help let it slide. Once it's done, you put your bolt in, torque this one to 52 foot-pounds, not the top ones. Go ahead and torque the top ones to 27 foot-pounds, and it's in. Reattach your brake hose, reattach your ABS lines, and then thread in your stainless steel line on this end and run it through. And this is actually air supply. Go to Home Depot, go to the electrical section, and find yourself some of these guys. They're just little insulated wire clips. They're like $1.50 a piece, and some self-tapping screws. I think this was a 3/8 size, and just kind of find a spot where it's nice and snug up over here. Leave plenty of slack for movement, and screw that in, and this is going to hold this in place real nice. I did the same on the other side. And below that you can see where I ran my plastic air line from the back of the car. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go just through a quick spiel of that. Now how I ran my air line through the back of the car. It's kind of hard to see here. So underneath the seat there's this rubber grommet. Drilled a hole in that grommet. I think it was like 5/16 size. Take the grommet out, start and feed the airline through that hole. So the airline is running through the grommet. Now, underneath there is a hole, and underneath the car there's a hole. Let's see if we can see it underneath there. You can see right there where my airline is going in. Okay, you can kind of see where I kind of started running. So now, in order to run that airline through, what I did was took a metal coat hanger. They are kind of hard to find. They're a little scarce nowadays. Found a metal coat hanger, unwind that, get it kind of straight, go from the bottom up, go through that little hole through the oval, go to the bottom up, scoot that thing through, and then find it from the top. Pull it through, get some duct tape, some painter's tape, any kind of tape you can find laying around, and tape the airline to that coat hanger. Make sure it's nice and tight and it's not going to come loose. Then go underneath the car and slowly start pulling that coat hanger back out. Eventually you'll pull the coat hanger and the airline right back out. You can pull the tape off, grab a hold of your airline, and start pulling. Now I didn't cut a specific length to go to the front. I just used the whole coil, started it through, and just pulled what I needed until I got to the front. So I just kept pulling, got to the front, cleaned it up real good, cut a nice piece, because it gets kind of nasty going through the body. There's all kinds of wax and grease and all kinds of grossness under there. So clean it off, do a nice cut, push the connect to the front, and then what I did was started from the front back, zip tying the airline to the brake line that runs underneath the car. So as you run those up, just zip tie it in a few places and make sure it's nice and tight and up and out of the way. Procedure is the same for the driver's side of the car. Just find that grommet, drill a hole, put it over the line, start pulling it through. Once you feed it through to the front, push connect, and then zip tie. The only problem I didn't like with the passenger side is I couldn't zip tie all the way up to the front because the fuel lines go into the body at some point and run up into the engine bay. So you kind of run out of places to zip tie it to. So I just tried to make it as nice and snug and tight as I could. And then what was left from the coil, I did a nice cut on the inside, left myself plenty of slack to connect the lines up into the manifold and everything else that I'm going to do for the trunk setup. So that's kind of the basics of running those lines. Once you kind of figure out where the holes are, prepare to get greasy. It's pretty nasty in those holes, and then go ahead and go from there and run your lines up front. So a few things I wanted to discuss that I did that I didn't include in the videos. One was cutting the front sway bar out. According to Airlift, per their instructions, you got to remove the front sway bar in order to get this thing to the ground, which Okay, cool. Front sway bar. A lot of people say, oh, sway bar, you're losing it. Now you lose control and you lose stability in the car. So the sway bar is there for a purpose. It's there to stiffen up the car, especially under quick maneuvers. Being lowered is going to help that a lot. You know, I'm not going to be driving this thing in 4x4 status all the time, so being lowered is going to help. And getting that control back. I decided to remove my front sway bar after a lot of debate and a lot of research. People going for longer sway bar lengths, people going for under the axle bars. I just said screw it, I'm taking it out. I drove with the sway bar disconnected on the car for a couple of days, and I honestly didn't even really notice that much of a difference except for on the highway. At higher speeds it's a little more squirrely. If you had to do a quick evasive maneuver, you may lose control of the car, but any vehicle at any high speed, if you have to maneuver quickly and you don't know how to handle it, you're going to lose control of the car. Even in a $500,000 Ferrari, if you have to maneuver quickly, you're probably still going to lose control of the car at 90 miles an hour. So anyway, I said screw it, I cut the sway bar out. So instead of, and when I say cut it out, I'm literally meaning I cut it out. Took a cutting wheel, high-speed cutting wheel, and I just went on the passenger side and zzz, and I cut that thing as close to the base as possible to straighten it out. Once it was cut, disconnect your sway bar bushings and clamps, pull those things out, and I came out on the driver's side and I just wheeled it and pulled it right out. Another thing I did that I didn't video, because there's already tons of video on it, is did a hole notch or frame notch on the passenger side to get the ultimate low. So anyway, there it is. That's my frame notch. You can kind of see it on both sides. And it's basically just a big hole right through the frame that the axle will sit up into when it goes to the ground. I am going to have a friend weld a piece of pipe or something in there to go ahead and restructure that a little bit. So I'm going to do that later on down the road when I have time to pull into a shop and have them do it. But if you decide to do the frame notch yourself, get yourself a hole saw, 3-inch hole saw bit. Hopefully go for one deeper than this. This one is probably, I'd say, depth-wise maybe about 1.5 inches, 2 inches, and it was not deep enough to go all the way through the frame. So what I did was I ended up going halfway through the frame, getting a pry bar, prying that piece down and out of the way so I could go back in with the hole saw and finish all the way through, and there's still that piece of the frame kind of left in there. It's real thin. I probably went through it in about 15 minutes after prying that piece out. It wasn't very hard at all. Do wear eye protection. You will fling metal shards all over the place. Don't get metal shards in your eye. It's not cool. So make sure you lubricate. I used soapy water. Some people choose to use oil. I just used a spray bottle of soapy water to keep it wet as I was going. Kept the metal from flying and stuff like that, and kept the smoke down. And also in the center of this bit you put a drill bit, which is your pilot hole to help keep it straight going through. And I suggest using a nice plug-in drill, not a cordless. You'll run out of battery real fast. Alright, so anyway, that is pretty much the front install. Sorry I didn't get any video for it. I'm going to try to get video for the rear. Any issues, problems that you may run into, shoot me a message if you have any questions. I can try to help you out. Hopefully you don't run into the problems I had, like snapping a stud. Don't over torque those top ones. It'll save you a whole lot of hassle. So anyway, we're going to go ahead today. We're going to start on the rear. Hopefully get all that put in. The one thing I am concerned about is the hole for the nutsert. You have to drill a 17-30 seconds hole. And I had to find a special tool place just to get that size bit. So hopefully everything will go smooth on that. And we can put all that together within a couple hours here. I've already got the tire off, ready to go on the driver's side rear. And as I go too, I'm going to rotate my tires, so that'll be all done. But let's go ahead and we're going to get started.